Hello everyone, thanks for joining today's webinar all around careers outreach and why industry need to get involved. Look, just I've got before we get into the nuts and bolts of it, really, just a little bit about some housekeeping rules. So the lines are on mute at the moment. We're in a webinar type format, and we've turned cameras off, but we'll sort of put them back on for some Q&A at the end. This session's been recorded, and a copy of that recording will be sort of made available afterwards for people who attend and people who are unable to attend today. I mentioned Q&A, and we've got some time at the end for Q&A. If you've got any questions as we're going along, then by all means, please fire them through. And in fact, I actively encourage you to fire those questions through into the chat box, which you should be able to see on your screens there. A little bit about today's speaker, really, I guess, before I hand over. But look, delighted to say I'm joined by Rachel Brickell. Rachel is careers manager at Science Industry Partnership and has 20 years experience, really, sort of linking education and industry in a STEM capacity. Rachel specializes in working with companies to create effective careers outreach programs and training industry volunteers to get the best results when working with schools and young people. And an extra sort of welcome surprise, really, for everyone is later on in the session as well. Hopefully we're joined by Jess, who is Corporate Social Responsibility Lead at Victrex, and has got some great sort of practical experience of their sort of careers outreach program at Victrex and how they've successfully engaged with over 6,000 students, really, since 2015. So opportunities there to tap into some expertise of people who have sort of a bit further on their careers outreach journey. So look, without further ado, I'll hand you over to Rachel to kick off proceedings, if that's okay, Rachel.
Yeah, thank you very much, Roger, and welcome everyone to this webinar on careers outreach. We'll get straight into it. So just wanted to think a little bit about who benefits from careers outreach. And whilst there are those groups that we would normally think about, so the young people that we're working with, potentially the teachers and careers advisors, our individual companies, there are other groups who benefit as well. So it's really important that when we're doing careers outreach, we try to reach some of the other groups that influence young people's career decisions. So people like parents and guardians. So developing a campaign that will work with those groups is really important. And whilst our individual companies will benefit from doing careers outreach, as we'll discuss more later on, actually the science industry as a whole is benefiting from the work that we're doing, because there's lots of companies out there giving the same positive message about the opportunities within the science industries. Obviously, the people who go out and spread that message, our industry role models, are getting lots of benefit from that as well. And we'll talk about some of that as we move later on. But one of the other things that I wanted just to mention was that actually it is benefiting society as a whole. So what we're doing by doing the work that we do in promoting careers in the science industries is we're increasing the science knowledge, experience and encounters that society are having, and we're helping to build our own skills ecosystem. So essentially what we're trying to do is inspire the next generation in order to secure the future. So why is collaboration between industry and education so important? Well, communication really is the key to this, as education is producing your future workforce, so your input into that process is absolutely vital. So working with schools, colleges and universities is something that we actively encourage industry to do. And what it can do is help you to understand the education landscape as well, and the types of restrictions put on education and what they're trying to achieve, and how we can actually make those two worlds come together and work together for the benefit of young people. And it's really important because industry can provide lots of things to enhance that education by giving up-to-date relevant information on careers and things that are going on within the industry. You can provide a real-world context to any of the curriculum that's being delivered. And it's also your opportunity to talk about what you need from the young people that are coming out of schools, colleges and universities. What skills and capabilities do you want them to have? So having those conversations with education helps you to define what you need as well. And it obviously increases the teacher's knowledge and confidence as well, and enables them to have conversations with a wider group of young people about the opportunities in industry and what we can offer. So just wanted to talk a little bit about the industry need here. So I won't read through these, I'll let you go through those yourselves. But these are just a few pointers as to why there is an industry need to do careers outreach. There are lots and lots of stats out there that say why we need to be doing it, but these three I thought were really pertinent. So it gives us a real need to actually to do this. And as I said, this is just some of the many, many reasons. And one thing, you know, specific to this group here today is thinking about just in the life science sector alone, 133,000 jobs are going to be needed by 2030. And in working with schools, businesses can help to actually raise ambition that young people have and help to inspire them about lots of opportunities that are available to them. So they can actually support young people's learning and show the value of specific subjects. So young people might be thinking, why are we learning X, Y, and Z? And somebody from industry going in can actually go and explain why X, Y, or Z is really important in their everyday working life. So you can really bring what young people are learning in the classroom to life. And it's even recognised now at government level that careers advice and careers guidance for young people is absolutely essential. So much so that it is now part of the Ofsted inspection criteria. So engagement with industry is seen as a really positive thing for schools and further education colleges to be doing. And this is something that they've been actually inspected on since January 2018. And to help with this, there was a framework of 8 guidelines which helped to define the best practice on careers provision. And this is called the Gatsby benchmarks. And industry can help to support lots of these different benchmarks. So for example, you could help to provide labour market information, help to link the curriculum to careers. You could help obviously with experience of workplaces. But the one that we're really going to focus on today is about encounters with employers and employees, and this is making sure that every young person has multiple opportunities to learn from people in the world of work about employment skills, and this can be done in a variety of ways through speakers, mentoring programs, competitions, lots of different ways that these can be done. And in terms of where science can lead, there's a big job to do about perception here. So the widespread view amongst young people is that science qualifications lead to a very narrow field of jobs, and we all know, working in the industries that we do, that that is absolutely not the case. So most young people, so a survey was done of 11 to 14-year-olds, could only actually name 5 science jobs, and we obviously all know that there are thousands of jobs available in our industry, so it is about widening that view amongst young people as well. But it's not just the young people that need our help, educators themselves as well. So one of the statistics that was done in a study by STEM Learning recently said that 82% of teachers said they didn't have the necessary knowledge to offer careers information to their students. So that's a really concerning statistic. But actually what they also showed was that actually having people in from industry can really help teachers' confidence when teaching their STEM subjects, and also talking about the careers that can be linked to them as well. So it's absolutely vital that we play our part as industry in this piece. And now is really a really good time for us to act. So whilst the last 15 months have been extremely challenging for business and for education, and have had a significant impact on our ability to do careers outreach, the stats that you can see there are actually showing that there is a positive move in the space, that young people are wanting to study STEM subjects and pursue careers in science as a direct result of the coronavirus pandemic. So now is a really good opportunity for us to harness that positivity within young people about their perceptions of science and science careers, and make sure that we are showcasing the science industries as a career destination of choice for these young people. So let's think a little bit about who should be carrying out this type of work. One thing that I think we need to do is think about the science industries as a whole. So rather than just focusing on scientific and engineering roles, actually showcasing the breadth of opportunities across the industry and the different routes into those careers as well. So it's not just about being a scientist or an engineer, but talking about all the fantastic opportunities that all of these wonderful businesses have to offer to young people. And it's about having relatable role models as well, and taking into account equality, diversity and inclusion. So people will tend to use role models who match them. So whether that is in terms of their ethnicity, religion, disability status, sexual orientation or gender, the right role model can become a source of self-efficacy and inspiration for students, and provide them with a positive example of the possible future self. So having a lack of diverse and relatable role models can have a negative impact on careers aspirations. So it's really important when you're building a careers outreach program to think about this and having relatable role models in there. Now, we understand that there are obstacles to actually doing outreach work as well. So whilst the vast majority of businesses are really willing to play their part and get involved in supporting schools, there are some things that make it not as easy as it could be. So it might be that they're not sure how to actually engage with the schools in the first place. Some of the processes can be really time consuming, but also one thing that comes out as the main obstacle is that they have too little guidance on support on how to make encounters worthwhile for young people and for their businesses as well. So that's something that we really focus on in the work that we do. So in terms of how to have a good careers outreach program, there's lots of things that you need that make that up. So it's things like having a high quality interactive materials that are pitched at the right level. It's about providing real life context and relevant information on next steps and career pathways. It's about having prepared and supported industry volunteers who feel confident to go into the classroom and work with young people. It really does need to be part of the business strategy as well, with it built into objectives for people who are wanting to go out and do careers outreach work. And it needs to be supported throughout the business, so it needs to come from the top down and the bottom up as well. Now, obviously there are some pitfalls with doing careers outreach activity, and this is often due to things like if you've got lack of time or lack of the experience to create relevant materials to deliver in the classroom, if there's a lack of support or guidance for the industry role models that you're sending out to work with young people. It can be difficult to know how to pitch your activities for different age groups, etc. And it can be really difficult to engage with schools as well. So these are some of the things that can often hamper working with schools. In terms of best practice, as Roger said, I've had about 20 years experience working, linking industry and education. And within that time, I've seen some really fantastic stuff and some stuff that wasn't so good as well. But in terms of some of the best practice that I've seen, I'm not going to name the companies, but I have worked with companies who've developed materials which actually showcase the journey of a product through their business. So each of the steps that product goes through, from concept to actually leaving and going out to the customer. And what they've done is looked at all the different departments that product would go through and linked all of the different careers that are in those departments to show just what a huge breadth of careers are available within their industry, but also showing all the different skill sets that they need. So they need lots of different people with lots of different skills. So it makes it far more relatable to a wider group of young people. See lots of examples of building really good resources where it's giving a real world context and helping to support the delivery of the curriculum. And this has worked particularly well with competitions or challenges where young people will actually put themselves into specific job roles for that day and solve real life problems that have been set by industry. That always works really well. And I've also seen a company who have then thought about how do they use their those industry role models back in the business as well. So as well as going in and working with young people and doing careers outreach, they then use those industry models, role models back in their business. So to host important visitors or to take charge of recruitment events. So often it's been groups of apprentices or new graduates, and they've put them in charge of all of those things. So regardless of who the visitor is coming to see, the tour of the business would be done by the apprentices and graduates. And then all of the events that they do linked to recruitments have been taken charge by those apprentices and graduates as well. And what that company saw was a huge reduction in the cost of recruitment for their apprenticeships and their graduate schemes because of all of the work that that group had done to engage with young people. Great. So just thinking about your businesses and what you're trying to achieve and what the benefits really are for businesses doing all of this. Hopefully there's a piece around attraction of the future workforce. So hopefully you want to inspire the best future employees to work for you. You want to be able to demonstrate the breadth of opportunities that there are within your business across all areas. You want to promote your company's careers locally, but maybe wider as well, and to grow your employer brand with that next generation of talent so that you become a career destination of choice. And the ability to be able to pick top quality applicants as well for things like your apprenticeship positions, which will allow you to draw down on your levy as well. And it's fantastic for the development of your employees as well. So it helps you as a business to grow your own talent and ensure that the business has the skills that it needs and that people within that business have the skills they need to succeed as well. It's really good to give your employees opportunities for professional development as we go through. So lots of opportunities to do something different as well. So it's often something a little bit different to the day job that people really enjoy and get a lot out of. It improves your employees' confidence, communication, organisation and presentational skills, whilst also building workforce morale. And it allows you to deploy your strongest assets in an ambassadorial role for your company. And obviously we all have corporate social responsibility to think about as well. And this is a really fantastic way of doing that. So hopefully it will help you to increase your involvement in the local community and give something back. It'll help you to support local schools to meet those careers benchmarks that were set by Gatsby that we talked about before, and improve the prospects of the next generation. It will help you to educate young people about scientific issues that are affecting society. As I said, it's a nice way to meet your CSR targets, but it's not just a tick box exercise. It has more meaning and will bring more benefits back into your business. And it helps you to publicise your corporate citizenship and strengthen your employer brand as well. So if they're all things that you are hoping to achieve, then the SIP Ambassador Programme might be something that your organisation would be interested in. So just wanted to tell you a little bit about that. So who are SIP Ambassadors? So our Science Industry Partnership Ambassadors. They're a network of industry professionals, and we include apprentices, new graduates, any career stage really in there, who are actually then trained to engage, inspire and infuse young people into careers within the science-based industries. And they work with young people and all of those people who help to influence decisions that young people make around careers, so parents, teachers, careers advisors, etc. They promote careers in the science industries through visits to schools and colleges, so that might be doing careers fairs or supporting industry visits, lots of different ways that they can get involved. And they present working in science in a positive light and dispel some of the myths and the stereotypes that surround industry. And just some facts and figures about where we are in terms of the activity we've done with our SIP ambassadors. So we have well over 500 of them trained from almost 100 different employers. We are working across 72 regions. We have 7 modules for our online training courses available, and we've delivered almost 60 courses. And we've also done about 13, we've collaborated with 13 different organisations. Now that might be organisations like STEM Learning that we work with in partnership. It might be industry bodies that we work with to help their members access SIP ambassador training, but we also do bespoke packages for companies as well. So we do bespoke packages for any company who wants to think about how they want to promote science to young people. So it might be something linked very directly to what they do as a business, and then we can help them to develop materials and then train their staff on those materials as well. So that's our SIP ambassador program. But what I'll do is hand back to Roger now so that we can hear from our next speaker.
Thanks, Rachel. Thanks very much for that. Look, really some interesting stuff there. Look, as I alluded to at the start, we're joined on today's session with a colleague, Jess Long. Jess Long is CSR lead at Victrex. Now, Victrex are sort of well, quite the way on probably in their sort of careers outreach journey, and have engaged with over 6,000 students since 2015, and that's sort of in no small part down to the work that Jess does. So I thought it would be useful perhaps for you, Jess, if that's okay, to talk about your experiences of careers outreach and share your learnings with the colleagues on today's session, if that's okay.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Roger. So yes, as Roger mentioned, my name's Jessica Long. So I've been involved in the early careers and apprenticeship programs at Victrex for almost 2 years now. So to give you a bit of a kind of a high-level overview, the business in 2015, the business made a commitment to the early careers outreach programs and set some quite ambitious long-term targets to help enhance the work that we were doing and promote our objectives to help inspire the next generation. So the goals that the business sets is probably one of the key drivers that keeps this agenda moving, in all honesty. So we set 3 targets, which we were hoping to reach by, or we will reach by 2023. So one of those was around 10,000 hours we wanted to contribute to the communities where we work and operate, which we're currently on track with. So we've got just over 8,500 hours which have been contributed by our employees at Victrex to the community. Another one of the focuses was around how many students we actually wanted to reach. So it's great all the work that we've been doing, but how many students have we actually managed to influence? So we set an original target of 1,000 students, however, exceeded this figure into year 2, and currently tracking at just under 7,000 students now, actually. So the final target, which we look at, is ensuring that over 50% of our employees are engaged in the agenda, and again, on track to reach that by 2023. So that's kind of the high level overview of how we drive our performance with early careers. Since I've joined back in 2019, we've been on a very interesting journey, where originally probably only about 30% of my role was dedicated to early careers, and now 70–80% is made up of the work that we do within the community. So there's been a real shift in terms of priority for the business, especially probably more so in the last 12 months as we've been going through the differences that we've seen with COVID. So in that time, so probably in the last just under 2 years, we've gone from having pretty much no resources and no structure to having a full suite of early careers work resources. We've got templates, and we've also been increasing the number of our STEM ambassadors. We started off at the back end of 2019 with just 4. We've now got 38. And likewise with our SIP ambassadors, I think we started off with 1, Rachel, when we originally did the training, but we've got 15 now. I'm looking to continue to increase that. So it's been a long road, with everything else which was thrown into the mix shortly after our first initial training session with Rachel last year. We had to adapt our style and prepare our employees for a new way of working. As well as a new way of inspiring the next generation. So the difference that we've seen between virtual and real life setting, it's been extremely different and quite challenging in all honesty. We had to completely change our approach, including all the materials that we previously built. So a lot of work went into rebuilding and to make sure that we were able to continue to support young students. And I think, as Rachel touched on earlier, as employers, students and teachers need us as people to help influence now more than ever. So one of the main benefits through the pandemic has been the support that we've received through our education partners. So we work very closely with a number of different organisations, SIT being one of them, who haven't just helped us from a training perspective to help prepare our employees for what that virtual setting looks like, but they've also helped us to adapt our approach to delivering the early careers programmes, including the resources which came with that as well. And this was all at a time when the first lockdown had just happened. In fact, I'm pretty sure it was probably a couple of weeks after lockdown, Rachel, but the SIT portfolio of resources was just a huge help in just getting us started on that virtual journey. So for anyone who's kind of at the beginning of the stage, I would definitely recommend utilising external parties where you can. So back to the start of 2020, it was very much a slow start. We had to allocate a lot of our early career resources to other projects within the business that were focusing on the impact that COVID had on our employees and communities. But towards the latter end of the year, we were able to put our refocus back into early careers. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about some of the larger projects that we've been doing in probably the last 6 months. Actually, we've managed to turn it around. So since our initial training, we've developed many of our offerings, including one of our most recent successes with our virtual work experience program. So we ran a two-day event which ran 6 separate workshops, some of which involve content that we've developed through from the SIT resources. So activities 1 to 3, which are focusing around what does science mean to you, what's my story, and what opportunities there are in science. So through this outreach programme, we managed to reach over 30 students across both days, which was a huge result compared to what we've previously offered with our on-site work experience programme. Normally, we're able to probably have about 5 to 8 placements per year, whereas this obviously was a much bigger reach. So although we've had to adapt and change and think on our feet throughout 2020, I think the work that we've done, it just wouldn't be possible without the help of the external education partnerships. We work closely with a company called Speakers for Schools to deliver the work experience programme. They supported us a lot with things like safeguarding, which we hadn't really considered previously, parental consent. They provided us with a platform, with training, and all we had to do is basically develop the materials, which we've now done and delivered. So yeah, I think utilising them and having them as a support has just helped make the journey a little less bumpy. So another huge focus, which again I wanted to mention today, and again Rachel's touched on this earlier, but a huge focus for us over the last few years has been highlighting careers with the next generation, specifically within STEM, to those underrepresented groups. So although we are seeing an increase in the science sector from everything that's happened in the last 12 months, there is still a huge shortage in students pursuing these careers, and there has been pre-COVID. And even more so, there's an even bigger shortage in young women pursuing these careers. So something which has been ongoing for some time now, the latest figures show, I think women represent, I think it's under 30%, or may have just reached over 30%, but women only represent a short percentage of the STEM workforce. So although we're seeing a slow kind of incline in this figure year on year, there's still a lot more work which needs to be done, and that is again where us as a local employer can come in and really make a difference and help to inspire young women to have the confidence to be able to pursue these careers. Again, like as Rachel mentioned, a lot of teachers don't have the confidence or knowledge because they've gone through very kind of academia pathway where they've studied college, university, they've not had much exposure to things like apprenticeships or other careers. So that's where us as specialists can come in and really add some value. So some of the projects that we've been working on to support the Women in STEM agenda is we've been starting to focus and align ourselves to Global Awareness Days. So for the last 2 years, we've been more actively supporting the UN's United Nations International Day of Women and Girls in Science. So that falls in February. So in 2020, we ran an experiments challenge with our employees to share with their families. We also shared these resources with local schools within the areas where we operate. And these videos were aimed at showcasing our own women in science and showcasing that science can be fun, showcasing some of the kind of the highlights of science. So we had 3 different experiments which they were all challenged to. So that was last year, and then this year we've launched a library of virtual case studies, which have all been aimed again at showcasing women in science at VitTrex and the types of roles that they're in. So all which are now readily available on our YouTube playlist. And again, this piece of work stemmed from one of the activities, What's My Story, which comes through from the SIP training, which is looking at, well, how did you get there? What was your career journey? And as schools have been struggling, probably more so last year actually, when lockdown first hit the schools, they've been really struggling to fit early careers into the timetable. But again, as Rachel's mentioned, it's part of their objectives now, that they have to make sure that students have got that early careers experience. So rather than us, where we previously were coming in on site to deliver our early careers outreach programs, we provided these resources so that they could make them, so that they were available to them at a time to suit them. Advice to employers that are looking to enhance their early careers program would be just network as much as you're able, because I can't stress enough how much that we've leaned on the specialists within this field. So people like SIP, you've got the STEM learning hubs as well, Speakers for Schools, as I've mentioned. And most of the people that we engage with in these companies have built up huge networks with local schools and already have a massive range of people that they can help to really develop your outreach programs. And in addition to that, they've already got a range of resources which can help just start your journey for those that haven't yet reached the early careers within their organisation. But even for those that have, it can just help to enhance the programs. I mean, we had probably the bare bones when we initially engaged with SIP, but it was just about developing those resources. And then probably another tip of advice, because when I first joined VitTrex, it was very much, I suppose not confronting, but there was just a lot of information and so many different groups that we tried to target. And then what we did is we went through a bit of a kind of, I suppose, a bit of an audit about what we were doing, what our approach was, and we decided to just focus on one key age group. So if you're just starting out, that's one thing that I can recommend, because sometimes the thought of having to create so many different types of resources for different age groups can be quite daunting. So if you are just starting out, I would advise just to focus on that one age group and develop from there. And again, there's lots of materials available through SIPs and learning, and we utilise those a lot throughout, and even more so with the virtual setting. And probably the last bit of advice is just don't be put off by the unknown. There is some work required, yes, but once you've got the foundations in place, which is where we kind of got to at the back end of last year, and you start to have more conversations with colleagues, what we found is that there's a huge audience that we wouldn't have even imagined that are willing to volunteer their time to help the next generation. So where previously it was very much down to my role and the people within my team to deliver, we've now got a huge group of people that are all working towards the same goals of inspiring the next generation. And regular comms as well out to the business. What we found was a lot of people didn't even know some of the work that we were doing. We report annually and we report regularly in our annual report about this work, but some employees just hadn't clicked on what we were doing. So even in the last week, so we've sent out some recent comms on the back of our work experience programme, and we've had over 10 people reach out and just submit interest in the agenda. So yeah, I think regular comms, don't be put off by the unknown, and utilise the professionals in the field. And one thing which I didn't mention earlier, which Rachel did touch on, is the outreach work that we do. It's not, I mean, the first and foremost is it's about inspiring the next generation, especially at a time when they need that more at the minute. But it also develops employees' professional development skills. We utilise a lot of our outreach programs for next top talent, so people that we can see in our succession planning. We encourage them to take part in more of these outreach events so that they can develop things like the presentation skills, collaboration skills, communication. The work experience program, which we ran last week, involved 12 different ambassadors from various parts of the business. We had continuous improvement, engineering, science, research and development, administration, safety, our safety team. So there's a lot of kind of cross collaboration across the business, which is also involved in that outreach work as well. So yeah, twofold in terms of benefits. So that's just a brief kind of overview. I could talk about our early careers program all day long, but yeah, hopefully that's given you kind of some insights. And for anyone that is interested in hearing any more, happy to have a kind of a conversation outside of this. Feel free to reach out. And yeah, welcome any questions if anyone does have anything that they wanted to ask on the back of that.
Look, Jess, thanks very much for that. Really useful insight. Great employer sort of perspective to see from that, and I'm sure this full
absolutely.
of useful information's there for people on today's session. Just before we get to the Q&A, we have got some questions, but just before we get there, I guess just some next steps really for people on the session. So there is a careers outreach workshop which Rachel is leading on the 24th of June, and that's a much more in-depth session, Rachel. Am I right? And sort of much more focused and more practical support in a small group environment.
So, yeah.
Cool. And again, to book on that, you can see Rachel's contact details at the bottom of the screen there. SIP ambassador training, which I know a couple of people have asked just midway through that presentation as well. I guess Rachel, is best way for SIP ambassador training for SIP members is to contact yourself using the email address on the screen.
Yes, yeah, that's fine.
Excellent. And then I know we might have some non-members on the session today, and of course there's opportunities to sort of influence the skills agenda and get involved and take advantage of some of the practical support through SIP ambassador work, the careers outreach, or through apprenticeship support as well. So anyone interested in joining the Science Industry Partnership, sort of visit the Science Industry Partnership website, and I'll follow up this webinar, sorry, with just an email with some links on for more information. And I should say we've got a follow-up webinar around apprenticeships that's open to members and non-members, and it's a specific focus there around apprenticeships for your existing workforce. And Rachel Roby will be taking us through that. So yeah, that's some next steps for people on today's session. And again, I'll follow that up in an email with a copy of the session. So if we can jump into some questions, I guess. There's a few that we've got here. I'm just going to, and actually, yeah, Rachel and Jess, maybe if you don't mind, if we could probably prove that we do exist and turn on our cameras at this at this stage. And if you're both okay, I'll just pick off some questions that have come through. First one for Rachel, really, and you may have touched on this, I guess, but does this link with the National STEM Ambassador Programme, and if so, how?
Yes, it absolutely does. So we have just finalised a formal partnership with STEM Learning that will really bring the SIP and STEM ambassador programmes together. I'm aware that a lot of companies who are on the webinar today are likely to already have some STEM ambassadors or want to be involved with that as well. So to make the process easier, we have formed a partnership. So what that will mean is that all ambassadors will be SIP and STEM ambassadors. So you'll get the benefits of the DBS check done free of charge through STEM Learning. You'll also get access to all of the STEM learning materials and It will make reporting easier as well, because ambassadors will just have to report via the STEM Ambassador platform, and that will then count towards their SIP Ambassador activity as well. So it means they'll only have to report once, not twice. But it doesn't take away from the added benefit of being a SIP member, because you get additional materials and you get additional training as SIP members, which is all very much linked to the industries that we work in. So it's very bespoke to the science industries, so that the resources are ideal for companies within the science-based industries, and that they are not available to the wider STEM ambassador community.
Thanks, Rachel. And make it fair, question for Jess, I guess. Jess, I think you touched on this in your sort of talk, really, and you mentioned a number of different partners. But what's the main benefit, of working with a third party to support your careers outreach efforts?
Yeah, I think it's just utilising their knowledge, in all honesty. We've probably leaned on them more so in the last 12 months, because we've just not really known what schools need, what support they need from us. So it's been really useful to engage with those external parties, because they've generally got regular communication with various schools within different regions. So it's been really useful from that perspective, but also just because they've got the most experience. They know what schools are looking for. They know how to link the materials in with the curriculum. And I think that's been one of the key things that we've really been able to focus on. We never really had a structure previously. We just kind of did a bit of research, went off to an event, and then that was that. Whereas we've got a completely different approach now, where we are utilising a lot more of these external resources and being able to utilise them within our offering. So yeah, I think that it's twofold, really. I think utilising them for the network experience, and just their knowledge with the resources and that connection with the curriculum and early careers.
Okay. Excellent. No, thank you for that. Back to you, Rachel. And I think maybe sort of this is quite an interesting one, and given especially something that Jess touched on, sort of the virtual environment, I guess, that they're doing at Victrex. But are schools open to careers outreach at the moment, given sort of COVID pandemic situation and sort of reluctance to bring in sort of visitors into school environments? Really, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, there is definitely still a pull from schools. Obviously, everything is being done virtually at the moment, which has its benefits and its drawbacks as well. What we're finding at the moment, working directly with schools, that perhaps the subject teachers are not quite as keen on having people in, because they're doing so much catch up on the learning that those students have missed out on. However, there is still, the careers sessions that is going on within schools. So the careers leads within schools are still very, very keen to engage with industry, whether that's in after school clubs, whether it's in PHSE lessons. So there is still absolutely that drive and opportunity to work with schools, and careers leaders are still crying out for people to go in and do activities virtually. I mean, I've been doing quite a lot over the last few weeks, and some of Jess's fantastic SIP ambassadors have supported some of those events as well. So it's been great to work with them. So definitely opportunities. It's just about finding the right contact in the school, and obviously we and other people like STEM Learning can help you with that.
Excellent. Thanks, Rachel. I'm conscious of time. I think we put this out as a 45-minute session, so we're nearly there. So I'm going to try and squeeze in one last one, if that's all right. And probably, I think, if I'm going to pick a question, probably for you, Jess, if that's okay, to put you on the spot. But what's the thing you most often get asked from schools?
Yeah, so that's changed actually more recently. I think a lot more, and the reason that we put so much focus into our work experience is a lot more are just looking for that, because your current year 11s didn't have the opportunity last year. We had to cancel all of our what would have been on-site work experience programs. Now they're just about to start, some of them, the world of work, so they've not had any exposure to things like mock interviews. So yeah, I think mock interviews, work experience programs for the latter end of the high school year, like your year 10s and your 11s, But in addition to that, there is still quite a few careers days happening. We've had a couple of requests through actually in the last few weeks for like virtual careers events that they're looking to do. But again, just to reinforce what Rachel was saying, in the past, we used to kind of scramble around and try and contact the schools directly. We now utilise people like SIP, people like the STEM learning hubs that we've got contacts with as well. We're utilising them to have the conversations on our behalf. That way we're putting the effort in and we're able to see that the reward, I suppose. But yeah, I think it is quite varied, and it will be varied from each school in terms of what we're looking for, but they're probably some of the most common ones that we're being asked for currently at the moment.
Okay, thanks, Jess. Okay, I mentioned the time. I think we're nearly there really, so I'll probably call it a day there if that's okay. Just time to thank both Rachel and Jess really for giving up your time today to take part in this webinar. It's really much appreciated, and thanks again for everyone for dialing in and taking the time out of their busy schedules to attend. Sort of a recap that a copy of the session would be emailed out in the next day or so, and just sort of links to all the different pieces that both Rachel and Jess have mentioned. So yep, look, thanks very much everyone, and wish you a very pleasant afternoon. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Cheers all.